Welcome to lecture 1, which is cardiovascular system. In this lecture, we are going to look at the anatomy of the heart, basically the names of the different parts of the heart. We're going to look at how the heart works, and we're going to end the lecture with some cardiovascular diseases. So let's start with the major components of the heart, of the cardiovascular system rather. So in the cardiovascular system, we have the heart. Okay, so the heart is a major organ, and it serves as a pump, right? And this pump provides the driving force for blood to go around the body. And the blood are going to be passing through various blood vessels in what we call a closed two-circuit circulatory system. So a closed system, as opposed to an open one, basically means the blood remains in the blood vessels at all times, and that's not always the case. For some organisms like insects, for example, they have an open cardiovascular system where the cells are kind of bathed within the blood instead of having well-defined vessels. So we have a closed system. The blood stays within vessels at all times. And we also have what's called a two-circuit circulatory system. So let's just explain that a little bit more for you. If you have a piece of paper, you can draw this with me. Before we talk about the two-circuit circulatory system, let's start with the one-circuit circulatory system. So something like fish would have a one circuit circulatory system. Right? So we would start at the heart. Right? The heart would then pump the blood to the gills. Right? So this is where the fish is going to pick up oxygen through diffusion, and then it's going to release carbon dioxide into the surrounding. And then the blood is going to continue, the oxygenated blood is going to continue throughout the body now before returning back to the heart for another pump. So this is a one path cycle, so that's why we call it a one circuit circulatory system. The main disadvantage here is that when the blood passes through the gills, you actually lose quite a bit of pressure, and therefore you will lose quite a bit of speed as well. So it might take a long time for the blood to go through the entire body of the fish, which is okay for a fish because fish they are cold-blooded, right? They don't have to maintain a core body temperature. So this one circuit circulatory system would be sufficient for their need. Contrast that to a two-circuit circulatory system, which is what humans have. So this is human. Right? We would also start at the heart. We start at the heart. We would then pump the blood, right, to the lungs. Right? So this is where you will pick up oxygen, right, and you will release carbon dioxide. And then the blood is going to go back to the heart first before it squeezes it a second time to go to the body. And then at the body, various parts of the body, you're going to be releasing the oxygen for the tissue to use, and then you will be picking up carbon dioxide from the tissue. Right? Then from the body, it goes back to the heart. Right? So there you have one circuit, two-circuit circulatory system. Right? So this ensures that even though you have a little bit of drop in pressure after going through the lungs, by returning to the heart first, you can increase the pressure again and squeeze it throughout the body. Right? So this is one circuit, this is two circuit. Let's go back to the PowerPoint here. So in humans, we have a closed two-circuit circulatory system. In general, we have various blood vessels attached to the heart, and the blood vessels that carries blood away from the heart, right, away from the heart, is going to be called arteries. Okay, A for arteries, A for away, and anything that returns blood to the heart are going to be called veins. So away from the heart equals artery, right? Towards returning blood towards the heart, that is going to be called veins. So there is going to be like a smaller version of an arteries, right? As they move away from the heart, they will branch into smaller arterioles, and arterioles are going to be supplying into the capillaries, and then that's kind of like the middle point where the blood is going to turn back and return to the heart. So past the capillaries, we have these venules, which are smaller versions of the veins. Eventually, the venules are going to merge together to form the veins and carry the blood back to the heart. So there are various blood vessels supplying oxygen to different parts of the body. Here are a list of examples. For the purpose of a test, I want you to know the head, the lungs, heart, kidneys, and liver. The other ones you can just kind of be aware of them, but I'm not going to be testing you on it. So the head, which of course needs blood because of the brain, and so to send oxygenated blood to your brain, it would be traveling through the carotid artery. So the carotid arteries are kind of running up the side of your neck. If you place your fingers on the neck, you can sometimes feel the pulse. You should be able to feel the pulse of the carotid arteries. And afterwards, after the oxygenated blood is sent to the brain, they will come back down through the jugular vein. Okay, jugular vein. So there was a news article about a lady who went to a hair salon to get her hair washed, and what happens was the angle of the neck support was not adjusted properly, and so that causes her carotid arteries to be compressed, and as such, not enough blood was going to her head, so she ended up having a stroke as a result of that, which is unfortunate. But according to the article, she did recover. So that's the carotid artery, right, going up to the head, and the jugular veins coming back down. To the lungs, we have the pulmonary arteries taking the oxygen, taking the blood to the lungs to get reoxygenated, and we have the pulmonary veins returning them to the heart afterwards. So the word here, pulmonary, I want you to know that it is associated with the lungs. The heart cannot use the oxygen within itself because the blood is passing through the chambers at really high speed and really high pressure, so it's not able to extract the oxygen from it efficiently. Rather, the heart relies on a network of blood vessels that are on its surface. We call those the coronary arteries and the coronary veins. When one of these things gets blocked, when the coronary arteries get blocked, for example, you might end up having a heart attack. Renal is to the kidneys, and hepatic is to the liver, right? So renal is the prefix for kidneys, hepatic is the prefix for liver. You might have heard of hepatitis, for example, right, which is the inflammation of the liver. So hepatic, right, same prefix. So the heart lies in the thoracic cavity, right? So you might remember from your previous semester, right? If this is the body, the head, the body, this is going to be the thoracic cavity, and this is going to be the abdominal cavity, and it's separated by the diaphragm, right? So the heart is going to be in the thoracic cavity, right beneath the sternum. So the sternum is your breastbone, right? If you feel it, it should be right there, right? And it kind of ends with a notch at the bottom. And the heart is going to be between the lungs. The heart has a pointy end to it, and we call that the apex of the heart. That is going to be lying on the diaphragm and points to the left of the body. Let's take a look at this picture, right? When you look at a picture like this, we are looking at it from the front usually, unless otherwise specified. So this is the anterior view. Because we are looking at it from the front, then the left side of the diagram is actually the right right lung in this case, right? And then the right side of the diagram is actually the left lung. So it's kind of mirror image, right? It's like looking at someone else's lung. So you can see here the heart has a pointy end, right? So that pointy end is called the apex, and the apex is resting on the diaphragm right here. Okay, so you can see this is a real heart, and that again is the apex. Okay, so you kind of see a halo that goes around the lung, the heart here rather. If you go back to the previous slide, you can see that the heart is actually protected by this double layer sac, which we call the pericardium. So more on that later, but this is basically like a protection membrane that goes around your heart, and it kind of anchors it in place as well. As you know, the heart beats all the time, so we don't want it to be, jumping around in the thoracic cavity. So by having this membrane, it holds it in place. And there is going to be some fat, which is good. A little bit of fat is not bad. It's going to help insulate. It's going to help insulate, so keep the heart warm, right? And it's going to cushion the heart, right? So if you fall down, there's a little bit of bubble wraps. Think of them as a kind of like a shock absorbing feature, right? So you're not gonna injure your heart every time you fall down on the floor, or like if you bump yourself in the chest. So there is the pericardium, the halo that goes around it, and as you saw in the previous slide, the heart is going to be between the lungs and beneath your sternum. So if I have to draw the sternum here, it would be right there. Okay, this is your breastbone, right? And you can feel that in the middle of your chest. Let's take a look at the heart wall next. The heart wall is basically what makes up the bulk of the heart muscle. In the innermost layer, we have what's called the endocardium. So this is the layer that's going to be touching the blood, right? In general, you want to remember that any surfaces that come in contact with blood, you want it to be a smooth layer, okay, a smooth surface, because blood does not like rough patches. Okay, if blood passes through a surface that's rough, there's going to be a tendency for it to clot, right? So we want to ensure that the surface that comes in contact with the blood is going to be smooth. And to do that, the endocardium is made up of a single layer. That's what simple means, single layer of flat cells, okay? Simple squamous. So think of them as little sunny side up eggs, right? These are cells, okay? And they are going to be connected to each other like that, right, creating the endocardium, and they're really thin, okay, just a simple layer. Simple means single layer. So the blood is going to be passing through these surfaces, and it's not going to clot, because once again it's going to be smooth. Outside of the endocardium is going to be the myocardium. That's the thickest part of the heart wall, okay, thickest part of the heart wall. So I'm just going to draw over the words here. Sorry about that. There is your myocardium. Okay, so this is the heart muscle. It makes up the bulk of your heart wall. So this layer, endocardium number 1. This layer, myocardium, and then you have the epicardium on the outside. There's the epicardium right there. Okay, epicardium. That's number 3. Okay, so together these 3 things makes up the heart wall. And the blood, again, right, the blood would be over here, right, passing through the endocardium layer. Now let's take a look at this epicardium in a little bit more detail. The epicardium actually is going to be continuous with the pericardium, right? So you might remember the pericardium is that membrane that goes around the heart, right? So let me go back to this video, this slide to show you, right? This blue membrane is the pericardium, and it's a double layer membrane, right? So the inner layer of the pericardium, the layer that is going to be in direct contact with the heart, we call that the visceral pericardium, and that actually is a continuation of the epicardium. Okay, so just to recap for you, right, we have the endocardium, right, endocardium, which is where the blood is going to be in direct contact with. We have the myocardium, which is the muscle, and then we have the epicardium, which for our purpose is going to be continuation of the visceral pericardium, right? And then the pericardium, as I said, is a double layer membrane. So the inner layer, the parts that's touching the surface of the heart, is the visceral pericardium. And then the outer layer of that is going to be the parietal pericardium. Okay? And in between the two membrane, we have what's called the pericardial fluid. And that fluid ensures that when the heart beats and the membrane is rubbing against each other, you are going to be able to reduce friction. Right? It's gonna be serving as a lubricant, right? To minimize friction, to minimize wear and tear. So that's the relationship between the heart wall and the membrane. In this picture, it shows you what the normal pericardium looks like. So there are two layers here, right? The inner line. Here, the inner black line, that's the visceral pericardium, which is a continuation of the epicardium. And over here, the outer black line, that would be the parietal pericardium. And the white space in between would be filled with the pericardial fluid. It's possible for the pericardium to become inflamed, right? And you would have a condition called pericarditis. Anything that's ending with itis is going to be some kind of inflammation, like hepatitis, right? For example, gingivitis, right? So these are all inflammation. So in this case, it is the inflammation of the pericardium. So that is very painful because every time your heart beats, the pericardium is irritated, and depending on the cause, this can actually be caused by bacterial infection or viral infection. You will require different treatment, right? Antibiotics for bacterial infection and antivirals for viral infection.